So Rocktober this month, so Bob Dylan's our first song, then we have a song by Van Morrison coming up called The Healing Game. And that's our talk title today, is The Healing Game. So here I am, again, back on the corner, again, back where I belong, where I've always been. Everything's the same. It don't ever change. I'm back on the corner again. It's the healing game. So in this song is a recognition. Robert, you want to get our screen up here? In this song is a recognition, the healing game. In this song is a recognition that the more life changes, the more it stays the same. That we are seeing represented here on the platform this morning by means of this ofrenda. The more life changes, the more it stays the same. And it is one of the many means of recognizing this. This happens to be a tradition from our friends south of the border, not only to honor those who have gone before us, but also to remind those of us who are left to prepare for the natural end of our life. And though we may be afraid, right? So notice some of the frightening images, the skeletons and so forth. It is a place of joy that we go to. So, what? I had to get a little something in there. All right, no. You know, I have a Notre Dame tie that I haven't worn this year. Not that I believe in superstition, but I don't want to jinx them. So, anyway, that's the part that's tied to the image of joy, in case you're wondering how that ties in. So anyway, so tied to these images of death, then, there are images of life. So notice these great sculptures. So there's one over here. There's one over here on the piano. There's one in the back there. That they are both fun and somewhat menacing at the same time if you're not used to this tradition. And the mementos left up here. So there's lots of photographs. There's a harmonica up here. And some of them are fun. So honoring women's health. There's a memento up here for that. I would encourage you to come check that out. There's and our friend Cynthia, who really kind of started all this stuff, Reverend Jessica's sister, that next to her is a picture of Steve Jobs. Now, she was an engineer, right? She was an engineer out at Edwards. And Steve was an engineer, and one of those guys who was able to bridge the gap creatively, in a really creative way, between engineering and art and design. Okay, so you could argue, so if you remember MS-DOS, remember MS-DOS? Yeah, so you could argue that it was Steve Jobs who made Bill Gates a billionaire. Because if it was left to DOS, none of us would be using computers. Right? And the tech revolution would never have happened. Right? So also with this idea of joining death with life and life with death, I wanted to bring our attention to this latest edition by Margot Gravel. Right? So in the back here, you'll see two skeletons dressed in traditional Mexican costumes, dance costumes, and but they're dancing. Right? So they're dancing. So this idea that as we move to the other side, we are moving there in joy, in a joyful expectation of that which awaits us on the other side. It's a beautiful example of that which we are on this plane of consciousness. Our mind, our love, our beauty, truth, these immaterial things that are part of us. This is a part that we take with us to the other side for our next evolution and our next expression, to create in some new wonderful way that we can't know on this side. It can only happen on that side. Right? And so finally, also we have over here, there's skulls. There's skulls of all kinds. And so here in the north, at least for myself, when you see skulls, you know, I think of monsters and boogeymen, right? And yet at the same time, these skulls are decorated. And not only that, not only are they decorated, but they're made out of not salt, but sugar. Right? And so an enticement, perhaps, to consume that which we are afraid of. To consume that which we are afraid of. So for those of us who are still among the living, what is most important? What is most important is that while we live, we live. This is Ernest Holmes said this years ago. The most important thing that we do while we live is that we live. And so sometimes that means that some part of us may have to die. That we may have to release it. And so that idea then begs the question, what is it about our life right now that we are afraid of? What is it about our life right now we're afraid of? For some of us, it might be stepping out of our youth into middle age, or middle age into the next evolution, whatever the politically correct thing to say. Right? Into the wisdom. Right? What are we afraid of? What has us out on the corner again? Playing the healing game. Maybe it's looking bad. Being disrespected. Or being disrespected on the job or at home. In my community. So Ernest Holmes says this in Ideas for Living, that an attitude of dislike or hate or viciousness toward other people robs ourselves of the healing power and the comforting presence of love. So I have to say that in the years that I've been aware of ofrendas, I've seen many things. I see tequila, right? I see oranges, beans, mementos, lots of fun little things. The one thing that I don't see is money. I've never seen money on the altar. So with the scores of people that I have visited in the hospital, and the few that I have helped to cross over to the other side, they don't talk about money at all. They don't talk about how they wish they'd have worked more. They don't talk about how I wish I'd have paid all my bills on time. They don't talk about how I wish I could have got my husband to fix that squeaky door, or my wife to lose those 20 pounds, or any of the other stuff that we beat up on each other about. They talk about all the times that they could have loved, said a loving thing, changed the tone in which they spoke to each other, to be gentle with each other. All the missed opportunities. This is what people talk about. So I just think it's one of the great ironies of life that we really don't sort out what's most important until we get to the end of it. Unless we come to places like this and think deeper thoughts. Thoughts that aren't anchored in the material jive of striving and what the world says is success. What the world says is important. Right? They'd rather get us all jacked up over the stock market and Libya and what's going on than how do I talk to my loved one when I'm aggravated and do it in a sweet way. That's still direct. Still direct. But still free of tone. Tone's the big one. Right? So then the question is then, what do we give most of our attention to? Right? As a child, I learned the first law of Moses this way. I am the Lord your God. Thou shalt not have false gods before me. And then, years later, I go to a 12-step meeting, and I hear some crusty old-timer say, that which you give your attention to the most is your false god. Ooh, I hate that! Right? It was easy when it was a bottle. Well, it wasn't that easy. Once I got used to it, it was easy. Right? But monitoring how I show up in the world. Right? Not on the good day when I'm Reverend Mike, but on the days when I'm aggravated and I'm Contractor Mike. So, yes, so if you're like me, you know, what is it? So that which you give your attention to the most, that is your false god. So, if you're like me, going around chanting the name of God 24/7, this is great news. That was a joke, folks. Okay. So what is it? What is it we're giving our attention to? If we are living in the world looking for ways to express more love, we're on the right track. Right? And we can still want to earn money. We can still want to have a nice place to live and a nice car to drive and have some measure of luxury. Right? But it's the byproduct of our spiritual practice that is looking for ways to cultivate more love and to cultivate more healing. Because what we know in this teaching is if there is an appearance of lack of any kind, then what we need to do then is to step into the healing game. To step into healing our consciousness. Not them out there. Not him or her. And that's a big temptation sometimes when, well, at least in the times I've been married, it was a big temptation. But clearly I didn't figure that one out. And there's a lot of folks who haven't.